On February 21, 1930, on a cold morning at the Arizona State Prison in Florence, Eva Dugan, a 52-year-old woman, became the central figure in one of the most infamous executions in American history. This date marks not only her death, but also the event that led to reforms in Arizona's justice system, with the hanging method being abolished just a few years later. To better understand Eva, we need to rewind through the key milestones in her life. Born in 1878 in Salisbury, Missouri, migrated to Alaska during the Klondike Gold Rush from 1896 to 1899, moved to Pima County, Arizona in the early 1900s, hired as a housekeeper for Andrew J. Mathis around December 1926. Mathis disappeared on January 14, 1927. His body was discovered on December 11, 1927. The trial in February 1928 resulted in a death sentence. Appeals dragged on until December 1929. And finally, the botched execution in 1930, leading Arizona to switch to lethal gas in 1934 and lethal injection in 1993. These milestones not only outline Eva's tragic journey, but also reflect the social context of early 20th century America, where women like her struggled with poverty, migration, and gender biases. Eva Dugan represented a typical class of American women during the transition from the 19th to the 20th century. Female, white, born into an ordinary working-class family in the rural Midwest, Missouri, with no advanced education but possessing strong resilience and adaptability. She belonged to the group of internal migrants, leaving her hometown in search of economic opportunities, a common phenomenon during the industrialization era and gold rushes. As a single mother of 2 children, one boy, 1 girl, Eva faced divorce or abandonment, a major social issue at the time when women had limited legal rights. She was part of the lower working class, engaging in manual and service jobs, performing as a singer in saloons, working as a prostitute in Alaska to support her children, and serving as a housekeeper in Arizona. Her demographics reflected gender inequality. Women made up a low percentage of the formal workforce, about 20–25% in early 1900s America. But many like Eva had to work underground in the black economy, especially in frontier regions like Alaska and Arizona. Arizona at that time was a territory undergoing urbanization, with a population mainly consisting of white migrants from the east, around 80%, and Eva integrated into the agricultural community, where female labor was often exploited. She had been married at least 4 times, with her husbands mysteriously disappearing, placing her in the widow demographic, a rare but socially suspicious group, often accused of being black widows in criminal cases. At age 52 when executed, she fell into the older death row inmate category and was the first and only to date woman executed in Arizona, in a context where capital punishment was primarily applied to men's sex, with women accounting for only about 2–3% nationwide during that era. Imagine the atmosphere at that moment. The dawn light had not yet broken, but Florence prison was packed with over 100 spectators, including women allowed to witness for the first time. A demographic shift in the justice system, reflecting the rising women's rights movement. Eva, with her background of migration and labor, stepped onto the gallows with a serene smile, singing loudly, "I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way." She bid farewell to the warden with, "Goodbye, Daddy Wright," refusing a final statement. But when the trapdoor dropped, the rope snapped tight and severed her head, blood spurting out, causing 5 people to faint. This is the story of Cheerful Eva, or Claw-Fingered Kitty, from an Alaskan singer to an Arizona death row inmate. In this video, we will reconstruct the events, explore her final meal, last words, and impact on justice. Eva was not just a victim of fate, but also evidence of the harshness faced by working women. Do you dare to follow? To better understand Eva Dugan, we need to turn back the clock to the early years of her life. Born in 1878 in Salisbury, Missouri, USA, Eva Dugan grew up in an ordinary family. Not wealthy, but not destitute either. Missouri at that time was a peaceful rural area, with vast cornfields and winding rivers. But for a young girl like Eva, that life seemed too confined. She was a daughter in late 19th century American society, where women were bound by traditional norms: marry early, bear children, and depend on men. Eva married young, giving birth to 2 children, a boy and a girl. But the marriage didn't last. Her husband abandoned the family, leaving Eva to raise the children alone in difficult circumstances, without support from society or the law. This was the first turning point, forcing her to become self-reliant and learn to survive in a world full of injustice. Salisbury, a small town in Chariton County, was typical of the Midwest: modest farms, clothes, knit communities, and a slow pace of life. Eva's family likely worked the land or in local trades, scraping by on meager earnings. Education for girls was limited, often ending after basic schooling to prepare for domestic roles. But Eva, with her innate curiosity and resilience, chafed against these expectations. The abandonment by her husband was not uncommon in that era. Divorce rates were rising, but social stigma fell heavily on women. Left with 2 young children, Eva faced poverty and isolation. There were no welfare systems like today, and single mothers were often viewed with suspicion or pity. She had to improvise, perhaps taking odd jobs like sewing or housekeeping in the local community. This hardship planted the seeds of her adventurous spirit, pushing her to seek opportunities beyond the familiar horizons of Missouri. Historians note that many women in similar situations during the Gilded Age turned to migration, hoping for better prospects in the expanding American West or North. From 1896 to 1899, the Klondike Gold Rush erupted in Alaska, drawing thousands from all over to the frigid North in hopes of striking it rich. Eva Dugan was no exception. She migrated to Juneau, Alaska, a bustling but chaotic town where men vastly outnumbered women, and survival required adaptation. Here, Eva worked as a singer performing in saloons, belting out lively tunes to entertain weary miners, after days of digging through frozen earth. But that job wasn't enough to support her and her 2 children. She was forced to enter the world of prostitution, selling her body cheaply to afford food and clothing. She adopted the nickname Claw-Fingered Kitty, perhaps due to her sharp nails or fierce performance style, and became part of Alaska's nightlife. The weather was brutal: blizzards, sub-zero temperatures, and rampant disease. Society was rife with violence: drunken men, beatings, and gold-fueled disputes. Eva had to learn to be tough, dealing with rude patrons and hiding the pain of a single mother far from home. These years forged her indomitable character, one that would later help her face the death penalty with uncanny composure. The Klondike Gold Rush was a frenzy of optimism and desperation. Over 100,000 prospectors flocked to the Yukon, but few found fortune. Juneau, as a gateway town, boomed with makeshift saloons, gambling halls, and brothels. Women like Eva filled essential roles in this male-dominated world: entertainers, cooks, and sex workers. Prostitution was semi-legal in some areas, a necessary evil in isolated frontiers where loneliness drove demand. Eva's dual roles, as singer and prostitute, highlighted the limited options for women. She earned meager wages, perhaps a few dollars per performance or client, but it was survival money. Her children likely endured hardships too, moving with her or staying with relatives. The nickname, Claw-Fingered Kitty, suggests a feisty persona. Maybe she defended herself with nails or wit against aggressive miners. Disease was a constant threat: syphilis, tuberculosis, and violence erupted nightly. Yet Eva persevered, learning negotiation, resilience, and perhaps a cynicism toward men. This period, amid the gold rush's chaos, transformed her from a Midwestern girl into a worldly woman, ready for further adventures but scarred by exploitation. After the gold rush faded, in the early 1900s, Eva decided to leave Alaska for a more stable life in the warmer South. She moved to Pima County, Arizona, a arid desert land but growing due to agriculture and ranching. Arizona was then a wild territory, with isolated ranches amid the desert, where law sometimes lagged behind settlement. Here, Eva was hired as a housekeeper for Andrew J. Mathis, an elderly chicken rancher living in Tucson. Mathis was no ordinary employer. He had a serious criminal record. In 1898, he was involved in the lynchings mob hanging of 2 Native American teenagers in Oklahoma, and in 1899, he was convicted of kidnapping. Mathis lived alone, wealthy from his ranch, but with an irritable and quick-tempered personality. He had served nearly 7 years in prison for setting fire around victims in the lynching, an act of brutality that reflected his aggressive nature. Eva, with her rich life experience from Alaska, quickly adapted to the job. She managed the household, cared for the chickens and ducks, and even developed a romantic relationship with her boss. According to her later testimony, they had weekly sexual relations, and she continued prostitution on the ranch, charging $3 per session from clients and giving Mathis $0.5 as a brokerage fee. Life seemed stable, but it hid underlying conflicts between an experienced woman and an old man with a dark past. Tucson in the early 1900s was a frontier town, blending Mexican, Native American, and Anglo influences. The desert landscape was harsh, scorching days, cold nights, and sparse water. Mathis's ranch, with its chicken coops and livestock, was a self-contained world, isolated from urban life. Eva's role as housekeeper involved daily chores, cooking, cleaning, tending animals. But her relationship with Mathis added complexity. His criminal history, lynching native youths in a vigilante act, spoke to the racial tensions of the time, where mob justice was common in the West. Mathis's kidnapping conviction likely stemmed from similar violent impulses. Eva, hardened by Alaska, might have seen him as a provider, but tensions simmered. Her continued prostitution suggests financial desperation or habit. The $3 fee, about $50 today, was modest, and splitting with Mathis showed her subservience. This arrangement foreshadowed the tragedy, a volatile mix of intimacy, exploitation, and resentment in a remote setting where secrets could fester. Around December 1926, Eva was officially hired as a full-time housekeeper by Mathis. She lived on the ranch in Tucson, a remote spot amid the desert, far from the city center. The ranch, with its chicken pens, cows, and vast surrounding desert, created an isolated space where secrets were easily hidden. Eva, now in her late 40s, perhaps hoped this was where she could finally settle, but her life had never been peaceful. She had been married 4 times before, and all her husbands had mysteriously disappeared, a detail that would later become evidence against her. Was it coincidence, or was Eva a black widow who specialized in killing husbands to seize their assets? That question would haunt the entire story. Her marital history added layers of intrigue. The first husband, from Missouri, vanished after abandoning her. Subsequent ones, perhaps from Alaska days, faded without trace, lost in the wilderness or victims of foul play. No bodies were found, but in the 1920s, such patterns raised suspicions. Eva's life trajectory, from abandoned wife to frontier survivor to ranch housekeeper, mirrored many women's struggles in early America: economic migration, gender exploitation, and the fight for autonomy. Yet, her story veered into darkness, setting the stage for the crime that would define her legacy. Around mid-1927, Eva Dugan was attempting to start a new life in the eastern United States, far from the Arizona desert and the dark secrets she had left behind. She wandered through cities, surviving on the meager funds from selling Mathis's car and other assets. But fate wouldn't let her rest. In White Plains, New York, a quiet suburban town near New York City, with clean streets and bustling urban life. Eva was arrested unexpectedly. The reason? A vigilant postal worker intercepted a postcard she had sent to her father in California. The postcard, with its ordinary address and content, matched the description circulated by Arizona police of a woman on the run. The postal worker, perhaps a middle-aged man accustomed to handling thousands of letters daily, alerted the authorities. Eva was apprehended on the spot, with no chance to resist. She was extradited back to Arizona on charges of auto theft. The Dodge coupe belonging to Mathis that she had sold in Kansas City under the false names Eva Mathis and A.J. Mathis. She was sentenced to 9 months in prison for this crime, a relatively light punishment compared to what was coming. But the story didn't end there. In prison, Eva might have thought she could slip away, but the Arizona desert was about to reveal its secrets. On December 11, 1927, a camper named J.F. Nash, perhaps a miner or wanderer trekking through the desert, stumbled upon the body of Andrew J. Mathis in a remote area near the ranch in Tucson. The Arizona desert, with its golden sands and cactus scrub, was an ideal place to hide crimes, but also where wind and wildlife could expose them. Nash, setting up camp for a hunting trip or exploration, dug into the ground and noticed a strange odor. He dug deeper and uncovered a shallow grave, with the body heavily decomposed after nearly a year under the scorching sun. A layer of lime had been spread to mask the smell, but it wasn't enough to prevent discovery. The evidence was clear. The victim's head had been hacked multiple times with an axe, a everyday tool on the ranch now turned murder weapon. Police quickly connected the dots. The body was Mathis's, and Eva Dugan, who had left the ranch with his car and belongings, immediately became the prime suspect. Not just because she possessed the victim's car and cash box, but also due to her personal history. She had 4 previous husbands who had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Husbands from her Missouri and Alaska days, vanishing without bodies or explanations. Police suspected she was a black widow, the type of woman who seduces men, kills them, and seizes their assets, a concept popular in criminal cases of the era. The press at the time was abuzz, with local papers like the Arizona Daily Star dubbing her the killer from Alaska, portraying her as a dangerous figure from the frozen north. Public opinion began to boil, with articles describing Eva as a worldly woman, once a prostitute in the Klondike, now accused of murdering her elderly employer. In January 1928, Eva was charged with first-degree murder, the most serious offense, potentially leading to the death penalty. She was held in the Arizona State Prison, awaiting trial. The trial proceeded swiftly in Pima County Court, Arizona, starting and ending in just a few days from February 20, 1928. This was a typical trial of the period, with an all-male jury, reflecting the male dominance in the American justice system at the time, when women had only gained the right to vote in 1920. The evidence was mainly circumstantial, no direct eyewitnesses to the killing, no definitive weapon or fingerprints. But Eva's behavior after the disappearance was enough to sway the jury. She had sold Mathis's car in Kansas City under aliases, fled across multiple states, and taken his belongings. The prosecutor argued this was proof of intent to cover up the crime. In her testimony, Eva maintained her innocence. She claimed Mathis was killed accidentally by Jack, the 17-year-old teenager traveling with her, in self-defense. According to Eva, Mathis, with his irritable temper, had struck Jack for not milking the cows on time. Jack punched Mathis in the face, causing him to collapse and die on the spot. She testified that she had tried to revive him with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, a crude first aid method at the time, but to no avail. Terrified, she and Jack decided to bury the body in the desert, covering it with lime to hide it. She admitted to weekly sexual relations with Mathis and continuing prostitution on the ranch, charging $3 per session from clients and giving Mathis $0.5, a detail the prosecutor used to paint Eva as a promiscuous woman exploiting men. But the prosecutor didn't buy the story. They proved that Eva used an axe to kill Mathis to seize his assets, about $600 from the car sale and his cash box. They emphasized her history of 4 missing husbands, the first in Missouri vanishing after an argument, the others in Alaska disappearing in the snow. No bodies, but the repeating pattern made the jury suspicious. The prosecutor depicted Eva as a predator, exploiting Mathis, an isolated old man with a lynching past, to get money, then killing him when the opportunity arose. Jack, the only witness, had vanished after Kansas City, and Eva provided no information about him. The jury, after a few hours of deliberation, found her guilty. The sentence, death by hanging, scheduled for June 1, 1928. This was the first death sentence for a woman in Arizona, a state that had only joined the Union in 1912, with a still rudimentary justice system. Before leaving the courtroom, Eva delivered an unforgettable statement, full of defiance. "Well, I'll die with my boots on, and in full health. And that's more'n most of you old coots'll be able to boast on. I'll die with my boots on, and in full health. That's more than most of you old coots can boast about." Those words, delivered with a cheerful and nonchalant tone, silenced the room and became a symbol of cheerful Eva. The trial was the climax of the conflict. Eva, representing women pushed to the margins of society, from prostitution in Alaska to housekeeping in Arizona, versus a male-dominated justice system, where gender biases played a significant role. The press covered it sensationally, with articles in Time and local papers portraying Eva as a dramatic figure, selling interviews to make money at $1 each. Initial appeals were unsuccessful, but Eva fought to the end, filing petitions to the Arizona Supreme Court. The case wasn't just about murder, it reflected 1920s American society, the Great Depression looming, women fighting for rights, and capital punishment as a tool of control. Eva, with her migration and labor background, became a symbol of injustice. Was she truly a killer, or a victim of circumstantial evidence? That question still lingers today. From 1928 to 1930, Eva Dugan endured a prolonged period of incarceration at the Arizona State Prison in Florence, a stark and unforgiving facility nestled in the Sonoran Desert. This was no ordinary prison stay. It was a limbo between life and death, where Eva fought relentlessly against her sentence through multiple appeals, clinging to the hope of overturning her conviction. The prison, built in 1908, was a fortress of stone and iron, housing some of Arizona's most notorious inmates in cramped cells under the relentless desert sun. Eva, now in her early 50s, was one of the few women held there, isolated in a wing dominated by male prisoners and guarded by stern wardens. Her appeals focused on the circumstantial nature of the evidence, arguing that without direct witnesses or concrete proof, the jury's decision was flawed. Lawyers petitioned the Arizona Supreme Court, citing procedural errors and questioning the reliability of her confession about Jack and the self-defense claim. Yet, each appeal was met with denial, prolonging her agony but also showcasing her unyielding spirit. During these years, Eva didn't succumb to despair. Instead, she transformed her cell into a makeshift workshop and media hub, adapting to prison life with the same resilience she had shown in Alaska's gold fields. In prison, Eva refused to wither away. She earned money through resourceful means, granting interviews to eager reporters for $1 each, a modest fee that added up over time. Journalists flocked to her, drawn by her charismatic demeanor and the sensational nature of her case. These interviews painted Eva as an enigmatic figure, a woman who had lived through gold rushes, prostitution, and now faced the noose. With the earnings, she sold handmade embroidered and knitted handkerchiefs to visitors and fellow inmates, meticulously crafting them with needle and thread in her dimly lit cell. The proceeds went toward a practical purpose, paying for her own coffin. Eva, ever pragmatic, wanted to ensure her burial was dignified, even if the state wouldn't provide it. She even sued a glamorous silk jazz dress adorned with beads, envisioning it as her outfit for the execution day, a nod to the flapper era's fashion and her own spirited past as a saloon singer. But in a moment of dark humor and foresight, she later decided against it, opting instead for a cheap, simple dress to avoid soiling the fancy one with blood or mess. This decision reflected her unflinching acceptance of her fate, blended with a touch of vanity. Her optimistic attitude captivated the public and press alike. Magazine Time dubbed her Cheerful Eva in an article dated March 3, 1930, shortly after her death, highlighting her witty remarks and refusal to break under pressure. Eva's prison routine included chatting with guards, sharing stories from her Klondike days, and maintaining a facade of cheerfulness that masked any inner turmoil. She became a minor celebrity behind bars, her story fueling tabloid headlines across the nation during the Roaring Twenties twilight. As the appeals dragged on, December 1929 brought a crushing blow. The Arizona Supreme Court upheld the original verdict, rejecting her final appeal and setting the execution date for February 21, 1930, exactly 2 years after her trial began. This confirmation sealed her fate, but Eva didn't falter. In January 1930, she submitted a clemency petition to the state's Board of Pardons and Paroles, requesting her death sentence be commuted to life imprisonment on grounds of mental health issues. She argued that years of hardship, from abandonment to frontier survival, had affected her sanity, supported by rudimentary psychological evaluations of the era. The board deliberated, but voted 2-1 against her, with a jury affirming her mental competence. Requests for a stay of execution were also denied, leaving Eva with no legal recourse. By February 20, 1930, her last clemency appeal failed. Rumors swirled that she might attempt suicide to cheat the hangman. Prison officials, alerted, searched her cell and discovered a bottle of raw ammonia and 3 razor blades hidden in her skirt. These items suggested a desperate backup plan, but Eva denied any intent, maintaining her composure even as the end neared. The night before the execution, from February 20 to 21, 1930, unfolded like a surreal farewell party in her cell. Eva prepared her own last meal, cooking simple prison fare with whatever ingredients were allowed, perhaps beans, bread, and coffee, savoring each bite as if it were a feast. She played whist, a popular card game, with fellow inmates and friends until nearly midnight, laughing and bantering as if it were any ordinary evening. Telegrams arrived from her daughter, Mrs. Cecil Lovelace, offering words of love and regret, and from old Yukon acquaintances reminiscing about her. Claw-fingered Kitty. Days. These messages brought a mix of comfort and sorrow. Eva refused to reveal her son's name, protecting him from the scandal. Her father, aged 82 and frail, couldn't visit. At 1 a.m., amid rumors she possessed poison, a 2-ounce bottle found under her mattress, she was transferred to the death cell. Undeterred, Eva smoked cigarettes, joked with the guards, and sang, "I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way," as she walked through a light rain to the gallows house. She kissed 2 guards goodbye, her final acts of defiance and humanity. On the morning of February 21, 1930, from 5:02 to 5:11 a.m., Eva Dugan was executed by hanging at Florence Prison. She was the first woman executed in Arizona, and the first where women were allowed as witnesses, a nod to evolving gender norms. Calmly ascending the 13 creaky steps, she smiled under the black hood, declining a final statement but bidding, "Goodbye, Daddy Wright," to the warden. The trapdoor dropped, and she fell over 6 feet. But the drop was miscalculated. The rope snapped tight, decapitating her. Her head rolled to the spectators' feet, blood spurting as her heart pumped for minutes, causing 5 people, including 2 women, to faint. The prison doctor declared her dead instantly, but the horror lingered. Her body was buried in the prison cemetery in a white silk shroud she had sewn in the coffin she had purchased. The botched execution shocked the nation, fueling anti-death penalty sentiments. It led Arizona to halt hangings after just 3 more, the last in 1936. In 1934, the state switched to lethal gas chambers, and in 1993 to lethal injection. As of 2024, Eva remains the only woman executed in Arizona, a grim milestone. Her story endures as a cautionary tale of justice, gender, and human error, reminding us of the fragility of life and the evolution of punishment in America. And so ends the tragic tale of Eva Dugan, a woman whose life of hardship and defiance culminated in one of history's most botched executions, forever changing Arizona's death penalty landscape. Her story reminds us of the fragility of justice, the struggles of women in a harsh era, and the enduring questions of guilt and circumstance. If this chilling reconstruction gripped you, hit that like button to show your support, share it with fellow true crime enthusiasts, and subscribe for more riveting stories from the shadows of history. Don't miss our next video. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching!